Buckle up, because you're about to hear the wildest story of my life. My wife, Lisa, decided our marriage needed something exciting, and that excitement apparently included asking for a free pass to be with someone else. What followed was a whirlwind of betrayal, revenge, and the complete unraveling of everything I thought we had. It started on an ordinary Thursday night. We'd finished dinner, grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, nothing fancy, and I was cleaning up the dishes while Lisa leaned against the counter, sipping her second glass of wine. She had that look on her face, the one she gets when she's about to ask for something big, like the time she wanted us to refinance the house for a pool. "Mark," she started, her voice soft. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Sure," I said, drying my hands on a dish towel. "What's up?" She hesitated, fiddling with the edge of her sweater. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. "I've been thinking about us," she said, carefully choosing her words. "Okay," I replied cautiously, my mind racing. Was she unhappy? Did I do something wrong? "I feel like we've fallen into a rut," she continued. "You know, like we're just going through the motions." I frowned. Sure, things had been a little routine lately, but I thought that was just part of being married for 8 years. Life isn't always fireworks and passion. It's stability, trust, and being there for each other. But apparently, Lisa didn't see it that way. "All right," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What do you think we should do about it?" She took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to say something big. "I think we need something to shake things up, something to bring back the excitement. I want one night to explore with someone else." I froze, her words hanging in the air like a bad joke. "What?" I asked, certain I'd misheard. "It's not about you," she rushed to explain. "It's about me. I need to feel desired again, like I'm still attractive. It doesn't mean I don't love you, Mark. I just think it could help us, help me, reignite the spark." I stared at her, my mind spinning. Was she serious? The woman I'd built my life with, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was standing there asking for permission to be with someone else. "You're not serious," I finally said, my voice cracking. "I am," she said, her eyes pleading with me to understand. "It's just one night. It doesn't have to change anything. It's for us, for our marriage." "For us? How is this for us? Are you hearing yourself right now?" I asked, my anger rising. "You think being with another person is going to fix whatever's wrong with us?" "It's not about fixing anything," she said, her tone growing defensive. "It's about variety, about feeling alive again. Don't you ever feel like that? Like you're stuck in a routine and you just want something different?" "No," I snapped. "I don't, because I actually value what we have." Her face hardened, and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is, Mark. It's just one night. You can do it too, if you want." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, so now you're giving me permission to do it too? How generous of you, Lisa." "It's not cheating if we both agree to it," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Look, you don't have to like it. I'm just asking you to trust me on this. I need this, Mark." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I'd loved for 10 years, the woman I thought I'd grow old with, was standing in front of me, completely unapologetic, as if this was some kind of normal request. "Why now?" I asked, trying to make sense of it. "Why are you bringing this up out of nowhere?" She hesitated, looking down at her glass. "Because I can't keep pretending everything's fine. It's not. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I've wasted my life." Her words stung, more than I cared to admit. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her she was being selfish and cruel, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the stranger in front of me. "I don't know what you want me to say," I said finally. "This feels like a betrayal, Lisa, whether you want to call it that or not." "It's not betrayal," she insisted. "It's honesty. I'm being honest about what I need. Can't you at least try to understand that?" I didn't respond. What could I say? That I understood? That I was okay with my wife being with someone else? Because I wasn't. I wasn't even close. She sighed, finishing her wine and setting the glass on the counter. "Just think about it, okay? We don't have to decide anything right now." With that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I leaned against the counter, staring at the spot where she'd just been, and wondered how the hell we'd gotten here. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while Lisa slept soundly beside me. Her request played over and over in my mind, each repetition making me angrier and more confused. How was I supposed to trust her after this? How was I supposed to believe that this was for us, and not just an excuse for her to do what she wanted? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. Our marriage would never be the same. I wish I could say Lisa's suggestion was something we both laughed off the next morning, a weird idea she blurted out after one too many glasses of wine. But it wasn't. If anything, she became more determined. For the next several days, she kept bringing it up in different ways. Over breakfast, she'd casually mention how some couples explore new things to keep things exciting. While we watched TV, she'd point out a storyline where characters experimented with their relationships and how it supposedly made them stronger. "Mark, you're not even willing to consider it," she said one evening while I was brushing my teeth. She leaned against the bathroom door frame, her voice a mix of frustration and pleading. "It's not like I'm asking for anything permanent. Just one experience, one time. Can't you trust me enough for that?" I spat out my toothpaste and turned to face her. "Trust isn't the issue, Lisa. It's the fact that you think stepping outside our marriage is a good idea at all." "It's not stepping outside," she countered. "It's something we're deciding together. That makes it different." I shook my head, too exhausted to argue. I hated the way she twisted everything, trying to make it sound reasonable when it was anything but. By the time a week had passed, I felt like I was living in a fog. The more she pushed, the more isolated I felt. Every conversation turned into a debate about her needs versus my insecurity. I started doubting myself. Was I being unreasonable? Selfish? Was this really as harmless as she made it out to be? Then, one night, I caved. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, the TV on but neither of us watching. Lisa turned to me, her eyes glassy from the wine she'd been sipping. "Mark, I need you to really think about this. Please." I let out a long breath, my shoulders slumping. "Fine," I said. "If this is what you need to feel better about us, then fine." Her face lit up, a smile breaking through the tension that had hung between us for days. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly. "You won't regret this," she said, "but I already did." The next few days were surreal. Lisa seemed lighter, almost giddy. She started paying extra attention to her appearance, trying on outfits and asking for my opinion. At first, I thought she was preparing for her special night, but when I asked her directly, she brushed it off. "I'm just excited," she said. "This is going to be good for us." Good for us. That phrase made my stomach turn every time she said it. One evening, she came home from work with a new dress, sleek, black, and far more revealing than anything she usually wore. She modeled it in front of the mirror, twirling slightly. "What do you think?" she asked. I stared at her reflection, unsure how to respond. She looked stunning, but the context made it impossible to compliment her. "You look nice," I muttered. "Just nice?" she teased, turning to face me. "Come on, Mark. Be honest." I forced a smile. "You look amazing." Her grin widened, and she kissed me on the cheek. "Thank you." It felt like I was living someone else's life, watching from the sidelines as my wife prepared to step into a world I wanted no part of. The night she'd been waiting for finally came. Lisa spent hours getting ready, moving between the bathroom and the bedroom while I sat downstairs, pretending to watch a game on TV. Every so often, I'd hear the faint sound of her humming, a tune I didn't recognize. When she came downstairs, she looked radiant. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless, and that new dress hugged her figure perfectly. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, looking at me with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "How do I look?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "You look great." Her smile faltered for a moment, as if she could sense the strain in my voice. But she quickly recovered, grabbing her clutch and heading for the door. "Don't wait up," she said, throwing a quick glance over her shoulder. And just like that, she was gone. The house felt impossibly quiet after she left. I tried distracting myself with the TV, flipping through channels aimlessly. Nothing held my attention. The minutes stretched into hours, each one heavier than the last. I couldn't stop picturing her out there, dressed to the nines, meeting someone who wasn't me. My mind spiraled, imagining scenarios I didn't want to see but couldn't block out. At one point, I grabbed my phone and stared at the screen, debating whether to call her. I wanted to demand she come home, to tell her I couldn't do this after all, but I didn't. Instead, I opened a bottle of whiskey and poured myself a drink. Then another, and another. By the time the clock hit midnight, I was sitting in the dark, the empty glass resting on the coffee table. The sound of her car pulling into the driveway jolted me upright. Lisa walked through the door, her heels clicking softly against the tile. She paused when she saw me on the couch, her eyes briefly scanning the whiskey bottle and the glass in front of me. "You're still up?" she asked, her voice careful. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She set her purse down on the counter and kicked off her heels, wincing slightly. "It was a long night," she said, as if we were discussing a late shift at work. I waited for her to say more, to offer some kind of explanation or reassurance. But she didn't. "How was it?" I finally asked, my voice low. She hesitated, her gaze darting away. "It was fine." Fine. That single word felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I knew nothing she said would make me feel better. So I just nodded and stood up, brushing past her on my way to the bedroom. "Mark," she called after me, her tone soft. "Thank you for trusting me." I didn't respond. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought played on a loop in my mind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning after Lisa's special night, everything felt off. She acted as though nothing had happened, moving around the kitchen with her usual energy, humming softly while she poured coffee and sliced fruit. I sat at the table, staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman I saw now with the one who had walked out the door last night. "Good morning," she said brightly, placing a cup of coffee in front of me. I murmured a response, not looking up. The weight in my chest hadn't lifted, and I wasn't sure how to push past it. "You okay?" she asked, her tone light but probing. I forced a nod. "Fine." She sat across from me, nibbling on a piece of toast. "I just want to say thank you again," she said, her voice soft, "for understanding. I know this hasn't been easy for you, but it means a lot to me." I looked up at her then, my jaw tightening. "Do you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Do you really know what this feels like for me?" She blinked, surprised. "Mark, No, really," I interrupted. "Do you understand how it feels to sit here, knowing you walked out last night to do something that completely goes against everything I thought we stood for?" Her expression hardened, and she set her toast down carefully. "I told you, this wasn't about us. It was about me. And I was honest with you, wasn't I?" "You agreed, Mark." "I agreed because you pushed me into a corner," I snapped. "You made it seem like if I said no, I was the bad guy. Like I didn't care about you." "That's not fair," she shot back, her voice rising. "I never forced you to do anything. You said yes because deep down, you know our marriage needed this." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Our marriage? What part of last night was for our marriage, Lisa? Because from where I'm sitting, this seems like it was all about you." Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter but no less firm. "You don't understand because you haven't felt how I felt, Mark. You haven't felt invisible. Like you're just existing in someone else's routine." "Invisible?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "That's what you think? After everything I've done for you, for us?" She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't want to fight about this," she said. "What's done is done. Can we just move on?" Move on. As if it were that simple. She left the kitchen without another word, and I sat there, staring at the half-empty coffee cup in front of me. The conversation had left me drained, but it didn't ease the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Later that day, while Lisa was at work, I found myself pacing the living room, replaying her words in my head. Invisible. Routine. I didn't know whether to be furious or heartbroken. It wasn't until I noticed her phone sitting on the coffee table that something clicked. She'd forgotten it in her rush out the door that morning. The thought of snooping made me feel sick, but curiosity, and something darker, overpowered my hesitation. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling as I unlocked it. Her passcode was easy to guess, our anniversary date. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Her messages with friends were mundane, filled with updates about work and gossip about her coworkers. But then I scrolled to a conversation labeled D. My chest tightened. I opened the thread, and there it was. Messages from David, our neighbor. David, last night was incredible. You looked stunning. Lisa, thank you. It was what I needed. David, let me know when you want to meet again. Meet again. The words burned into my brain like a brand. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Lisa's special night had been with someone we knew, someone I had trusted. I dropped the phone onto the couch, my breath coming in shallow gasps. A mix of betrayal and fury bubbled up inside me, and I clenched my fists, unsure of what to do next. When Lisa came home that evening, I couldn't bring myself to look at her. I kept my head down during dinner, answering her questions with one-word responses. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she just didn't care. But I couldn't hold it in forever. David, huh? I said suddenly, my voice cutting through the silence. Lisa froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. What? I saw the messages, I said, leaning back in my chair. You and David, our neighbor. Was this your plan all along? Her face turned pale, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. But then her expression shifted, hardening into something colder. You went through my phone? Don't even try to turn this on me, I snapped. You're the one who lied about what last night was supposed to be. I didn't lie, she said, her voice defensive. I told you it wasn't random. You didn't tell me it was someone we know. Someone I see almost every day, I said, my voice rising. Do you even realize what you've done? Lisa set her fork down carefully, her hands trembling. Mark, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but it doesn't change anything. Last night was about me, not him. It's not like we're starting something. Her casual tone only fueled my anger. You think that makes it better? That it was just some arrangement between the two of you? I don't know what you want me to say, she said, standing up and crossing her arms. I was honest with you, Mark. I didn't hide this from you. You hid plenty, I shot back. You knew this would hurt me, and you did it anyway. She stared at me, her eyes flashing with something between guilt and defiance. I'm not going to apologize for doing what I needed to do, she said finally. If you can't understand that, then maybe you're the one who doesn't care about this marriage. Her words left me stunned. She walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of everything that had just happened. As the night dragged on, I realized one thing. This wasn't just about her night with David. This was about the cracks in our marriage that had been growing for years, cracks I hadn't seen until it was too late. And now, I had to figure out what to do with the pieces. The days after that confrontation were a mix of silence and barely concealed tension. Lisa didn't bring up our argument, and neither did I. She acted as though nothing had happened, going about her usual routines, leaving me to stew in my thoughts. I didn't know how she could be so calm, so unaffected, after everything. The worst part was pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She'd say things like, "What do you want for dinner?" Or, "Did you remember to pick up the dry cleaning?" As if we were still the same couple we'd always been. One morning, as she was leaving for work, she kissed me on the cheek. It was so quick and casual that, for a split second, it felt normal. Then I remembered what I'd read on her phone. The messages from David, and my stomach churned. David, our neighbor, our friend, the man I trusted. I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind, imagining the moments they shared. It wasn't just the betrayal itself that hurt. It was the fact that she hadn't told me the full truth from the start. She had framed this whole thing as some kind of one-time, anonymous experience to spice up our marriage. But it wasn't anonymous. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. Someone else needed to know. That someone was Lauren, David's wife. It wasn't an easy decision to make. I wrestled with it for days, debating whether I was doing the right thing. Was it my place to tell her? Would it make things worse? But every time I thought about staying silent, I imagined her living in ignorance, thinking her husband was faithful while he was anything but. She deserved to know. When Lisa left for work that morning, I sat on the couch, staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over Lauren's contact, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, I forced myself to type out a message. Hi, Lauren. It's Mark. There's something I need to talk to you about. Can we meet today? She replied quickly. Hey, Mark. Sure. Is everything okay? You sound serious. I'll explain when I see you. Coffee shop on Main at 3? Okay. See you there. The hours crawled by, each one heavier than the last. I couldn't stop thinking about what I was going to say, how I was going to break the news. Would she believe me? Would she blame me? I tried to rehearse the conversation in my head, but nothing felt right. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Lauren was already there, sitting by the window. She waved when she saw me, her face lighting up with a friendly smile. But as I got closer, her expression shifted. Hey, Mark, she said as I sat down. You look stressed. What's going on? I hesitated, my hands clasped tightly on the table. Lauren, this isn't an easy conversation, but I think you deserve to know the truth. It's about David. Her brow furrowed. What about him? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look her in the eye. A few nights ago, Lisa, she spent the night with him. I found out through messages on her phone. Her smile vanished, replaced by a stunned expression. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she leaned back in her chair, her eyes searching my face. Are you sure? She asked quietly. I nodded. I saw the texts, Lauren. They weren't vague. He even asked when they could meet again. She let out a shaky breath, her gaze dropping to the table. I can't believe this. Actually, I can. Things have been weird lately. He's been acting distant. And I've noticed little things, deleted texts. Nights where he came home late and had excuses that didn't add up. Her voice broke slightly, and she pressed her lips together, taking a moment to compose herself. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm glad I know. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep this to myself. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sadness. Don't apologize, Mark. You did the right thing. I didn't think it would ever be him, you know? David always acted like he was so devoted to me. Lisa was the same, I said bitterly. She told me this whole thing was about us, about saving our marriage. But it wasn't. It was about her. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything hanging between us. Then Lauren spoke again, her voice firmer this time. So, what are you going to do? About Lisa? I shook my head, leaning back in my chair. I don't know. She doesn't think she's done anything wrong. She keeps saying it's in the past and wants me to move on. Lauren let out a bitter laugh. Sounds familiar. David's great at excuses. He could talk his way out of anything. For the next hour, we talked about our spouses, sharing stories and piecing together the timeline of their betrayal. It was strange, finding comfort in someone else's pain, but it also felt like a lifeline. For the first time since this all started, I didn't feel completely alone. When we finally got up to leave, Lauren gave me a small, sad smile. Take care of yourself, Mark. Don't let her make you feel like this is your fault. You too, I said. As I walked back to my car, I felt a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. Lisa might have shattered my trust, but she hadn't broken me. And if she thought I was just going to roll over and accept her rewriting the rules of our marriage, she was in for a surprise. This was far from over. After meeting with Lauren, something in me shifted. I had spent days feeling helpless, like I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But talking to her made me realize I wasn't completely powerless. If Lisa and David thought they could betray us and walk away unscathed, they were sorely mistaken. Back at home, I tried to act as normal as possible. Lisa was in the kitchen when I walked in, casually sipping her wine and scrolling through her phone. She glanced up at me with a smile that no longer felt warm. Hey, how was your day? She asked, as if nothing in the world was wrong. It was fine, I replied, my voice carefully even. Just ran some errands. She nodded, setting her glass down. Good. I was thinking we should book that weekend trip I mentioned. Maybe a cabin somewhere? Just the two of us. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around her audacity. You think a weekend away fixes this? Her smile faltered slightly. Mark, we've been over this. It happened, and it's over. I thought we agreed to move forward. No, Lisa, I said, my voice rising. You decided to move forward. You decided to act like everything's fine. I'm still standing here with a million questions you refuse to answer. Her expression turned cold. What do you want me to say? That I regret it? Fine. I regret it. There. Happy? No, I'm not happy, I snapped. Because you don't actually regret anything. You don't regret what you did, Lisa. You regret that I found out. Her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? I repeated, my voice filled with disbelief. Lisa, you went behind my back with someone we know. Someone I have to see all the time. How do you expect me to just forget that? She didn't respond, her gaze dropping to the floor. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something that might have been guilt, but it was fleeting. Look, she said finally, her tone softer but no less dismissive. I can't undo what's already done, but I want us to work through this. Isn't that what matters? I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. No, Lisa. What matters is that you've shown me who you really are, and I don't know if I can live with that. Her face hardened again, and she turned away, muttering something under her breath. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. Lisa's refusal to take responsibility was like a slap in the face, a constant reminder of how little she valued what we had built together. The next day, I reached out to Lauren again. Hi, Lauren. It's Mark. Can we talk? Her reply came almost instantly. Of course. What's going on? We agreed to meet at a park near her house. When I arrived, she was sitting on a bench under a large oak tree, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked up as I approached, offering me a small smile. Hey, she said. Everything okay? No, I admitted, sitting down beside her. I don't know how to deal with this, Lauren. She keeps acting like it's no big deal, like I'm the one making this harder than it needs to be. Lauren nodded, her expression somber. David's the same. He came home last night and tried to act like nothing had happened. When I confronted him, he just kept saying it was a mistake, that I shouldn't dwell on it. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. How do they not see what they've done to us? How do they think we can just move on? She let out a bitter laugh. Because it's easier for them that way. If we forgive and forget, they don't have to face the consequences. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything pressing down on us. Then Lauren turned to me, her eyes filled with determination. What if we don't let them get away with it? She said. I frowned. What do you mean? I mean, why should they get to dictate how this plays out? Why should we be the ones left picking up the pieces while they go about their lives like nothing happened? Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in days, control. What are you suggesting? I asked. She shrugged, a small smirk playing at her lips. Maybe it's time we reminded them that actions have consequences. I didn't know exactly what she had in mind, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. Lauren understood my pain, my anger, and my need to do something, anything, to take back the power I'd lost. As we talked, the plan began to take shape. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about standing up for ourselves, about showing Lisa and David that they couldn't just walk all over us. And as the details started to fall into place, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the shared sense of betrayal, but after that conversation with Lauren, everything felt different. For the first time since Lisa's special night, I felt like I had a measure of control over my own life. Lauren and I continued talking for hours that day. At first, it was about practical things, what she was planning to say to David, what I might do about Lisa. But as the conversation went on, it shifted to something deeper. We weren't just strategizing. We were venting, laughing bitterly at the absurdity of our situations. finding a strange comfort in each other's pain. When it started getting late, we decided to call it a day. As we stood by our cars, Lauren gave me a small smile. Thanks for listening, Mark. I didn't realize how much I needed to talk about this with someone who gets it. Same here, I said. It's been a long time since I felt like anyone was on my side. We said goodbye and went our separate ways, but the weight on my chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. That night, Lisa was out again, claiming she had a late meeting with clients. I didn't bother asking for details. I didn't trust her anymore, and she didn't seem to care. Instead of sitting around feeling miserable, I picked up my phone and sent a quick message to Lauren. Me, hey, are you free? Her reply came almost immediately. Lauren, yeah, what's up? Me, Lisa's out. Do you want to meet up? I could use a distraction. Lauren, same. Meet at that bar near the park? It wasn't the kind of thing I normally did, meeting someone like this, but I wasn't in the mood for normal. I needed to get out of the house, to be with someone who wouldn't make me feel like I was losing my mind. When I arrived at the bar, Lauren was already there, sitting at a small table in the corner with 2 drinks in front of her. I ordered you something, she said with a smile as I sat down. Hope you don't mind. Not at all, I said, taking a sip. The drink was strong, and I appreciated that. We spent the next hour talking, the conversation flowing easily despite everything hanging over our heads. She told me about how David used to be so attentive when they first got married, how she'd never thought he was capable of this kind of betrayal. I told her about Lisa's excuses and how dismissive she had been since everything came to light. It's like they don't even care, Lauren said, shaking her head. They're just so wrapped up in their own selfishness. Exactly, I said. They think we'll just roll over and let them have their way. Like we're the ones who need to adjust. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between us. We weren't just 2 people venting anymore. We were 2 people who had been hurt deeply, who were trying to find a way to take back what had been stolen from us. I don't know when the shift happened, but suddenly, the air between us felt different. The anger and hurt we'd been carrying turned into something else, something electric. Mark, she said softly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the bar. Do you ever feel like you just want to forget about all of it, even for a little while? I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We stayed at the bar until it closed, talking and laughing in a way that felt almost normal. By the time we left, I wasn't thinking about Lisa or David. I was only thinking about how good it felt to be seen, to be heard, to feel like I mattered again. When we said goodbye, there was a pause, a moment where we both hesitated, unsure of what to say next. Take care of yourself, Mark, Lauren said finally, her voice soft but steady. You too, I said. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way she had looked at me, the way she had listened without judgment. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone, and that was something I wasn't ready to let go of. The days after meeting Lauren felt like stepping into uncharted territory. My emotions were a mess: anger, guilt, relief, and something I couldn't quite define. Spending time with her had given me clarity and comfort, but it also left me with a nagging sense of unfinished business. Lisa still acted like everything was fine, as if she expected me to sweep everything under the rug and pretend we were a happy couple again. It came to a head one evening when Lisa returned home from work. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and immediately poured herself a glass of wine. Long day, she said, sighing dramatically. How about we order pizza tonight? I'm too tired to cook. I didn't look up from my spot on the couch. Sure, whatever. She paused, wineglass in hand, and frowned at me. What's with the attitude? Attitude? I repeated, finally meeting her gaze. I don't have an attitude. She rolled her eyes, setting her glass down on the counter. You've been sulking for days, Mark. When are you going to let this go? Let it go? I said, my voice rising. Lisa, you betrayed me. You went behind my back with someone we know, and now you're acting like it's my fault. I can't just let it go. Her face hardened. I already told you it's over. I've apologized, and I'm trying to move forward. Why can't you do the same? Because you haven't taken responsibility, I snapped. You keep treating this like it's a minor mistake when it's so much bigger than that. You didn't just hurt me. You shattered my trust. And you expect me to be fine with that? She crossed her arms, glaring at me. I never said I expected you to be fine. But if you can't even try to move forward, then what's the point of us staying together? The words hung in the air, heavier than anything she'd said before. My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. Maybe there isn't a point, I said quietly. For a moment, she looked stunned. Then her expression shifted into something colder, almost indifferent. Fine, she said, grabbing her glass of wine and heading toward the bedroom. You figure out what you want, Mark. Let me know when you've made up your mind. She slammed the door behind her, leaving me alone with the silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying the conversation in my head. Every word she said felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. I had tried to reach her, to make her see how deeply she had hurt me, but it was clear now that she didn't care. Not really. The next day, I messaged Lauren again. Me, can we talk? Her response was immediate. Lauren, of course. Same place as before? Me, yeah, thanks. When I arrived at the park, Lauren was already there, sitting on the same bench under the oak tree. She smiled when she saw me, but there was a sadness in her eyes that mirrored my own. Hey, she said as I sat down. Rough night? You could say that, I replied, running a hand through my hair. Lisa and I had it out again. She thinks I'm the one holding us back because I can't move forward. Lauren snorted, shaking her head. Classic deflection. David said something similar the other night. He told me I was being too emotional and making things harder than they needed to be. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. How do they not see what they've done to us? How do they think they can just walk away from this without consequences? They don't care, Lauren said bitterly. Or maybe they do, but not enough to take responsibility. Either way, it's up to us to decide what we're willing to tolerate. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right. Lisa had made her choices, and now it was up to me to make mine. What about you? I asked. Have you decided what you're going to do? Lauren hesitated, looking down at her hands. I've thought about it a lot. Part of me wants to confront him again, make him understand how much he's hurt me. But the other part of me, I don't know. I feel like I've already lost him. Her voice cracked slightly, and I saw tears welling in her eyes. Without thinking, I reached over and placed a hand on hers. You're not alone in this, I said softly. We'll figure it out. Together. She looked up at me then, her eyes searching mine. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us and the unspoken connection we shared. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As we sat there, I realized something. Lauren and I weren't just helping each other navigate our pain. We were helping each other heal. And that was something neither Lisa nor David could ever take away from us. Lisa found out. I had been dreading the moment, knowing it was only a matter of time. Somehow, she always had a way of uncovering things, whether it was noticing a misplaced receipt or overhearing a stray comment. This time, she found out about Lauren and me. It happened late one evening. Lisa came home earlier than expected, slamming the door harder than usual. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, when she stormed into the living room with her phone in hand. Her face was flushed, and her eyes burned with a fury I hadn't seen in years. Care to explain this? She spat, shoving her phone into my face. On the screen was a text I had sent Lauren earlier that day. Thanks for last night. I really needed that. My stomach dropped. I had been careless, never expecting Lisa to go through my phone or snoop through my messages. Lisa, I began, standing up, but she cut me off. Don't even try to deny it, Mark, she yelled, her voice trembling with rage. You've been sneaking around with Lauren, haven't you? How long has this been going on? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. We've been talking, supporting each other. That's all. Supporting each other? She mocked, laughing bitterly. You think I'm stupid? I saw the messages, Mark. Don't insult me by pretending it's innocent. Her words stung, not because she was wrong, but because of the sheer hypocrisy of the situation. I couldn't hold it in any longer. You've got a lot of nerve acting like the victim here, I snapped. You're the one who started this, Lisa. You're the one who destroyed what we had, not me. She recoiled slightly, caught off guard by my outburst, but quickly regained her composure. Oh, so this is my fault? You cheat, and it's somehow my fault? You broke us long before Lauren came into the picture, I said, my voice cold. You lied to me. You betrayed me with someone we both know. And now, you're angry because I found someone who actually understands what I'm going through? Give me a break. Lisa's hands shook as she placed them on her hips, her eyes narrowing. You are such a hypocrite, Mark. You spent weeks acting like you were the victim, like I was the only one to blame. But look at you now, doing the exact same thing you condemned me for. It's not the same, I said through gritted teeth. Of course it's not, she shot back. Because when I did it, I was honest with you. I told you what I needed. You, on the other hand, decided to sneak around like a coward. Her words were like a slap to the face, but I refused to let her turn this around on me. I didn't sneak around, I said firmly. And for the record, Lauren and I haven't done anything close to what you did. But even if we had, it still wouldn't compare to what you put me through. Lisa let out a harsh laugh, shaking her head. You're unbelievable. You just can't admit you're wrong, can you? You think you're so righteous, but you're no better than me, Mark. You're just as selfish as I am. I stood there, staring at her, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been selfish. But unlike her, I didn't pretend that my actions were justified. I guess we're both guilty then, I said quietly. The room fell silent, the air between us heavy with unspoken resentment. Lisa looked at me, her expression unreadable, before turning away and walking toward the bedroom. This marriage is a joke, she muttered under her breath, slamming the door behind her. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to chase after her, to fix things or beg for her understanding. Instead, I sat back down on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. Lauren was right. Lisa and David wanted to rewrite the rules of our relationships without ever facing the consequences of their actions. And now that the tables had turned, Lisa couldn't handle it. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, the endless arguments, and realized I was done. There was nothing left to salvage. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a cycle of anger and mistrust. It was time to take the next step, no matter how painful it might be. Lisa had already shown me who she was. Now, it was time for me to show her I wasn't going to stay in a marriage that had been irreparably broken. Tomorrow, I would call a lawyer. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The decision to call a lawyer hadn't come easily, but once I made it, there was no turning back. Lisa and I had crossed too many lines, and the trust we once had was gone. She was already up when I came downstairs, standing by the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee in hand. She didn't look at me, and I didn't say anything to her. The silence between us wasn't new, but this time, it felt final. After grabbing my own coffee, I sat at the table and pulled up my phone. It only took a few minutes to find a lawyer with good reviews and schedule a consultation. When I hung up, I glanced at Lisa, who was now scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened the night before. I wanted to feel angry, but I didn't. All I felt was a deep, aching sadness. This wasn't how I had imagined my life turning out. Later that afternoon, I met with the lawyer. She was a no-nonsense type, professional but compassionate. After I explained the situation, she leaned back in her chair and gave me a long, appraising look. You've been through a lot, she said. But if you're serious about moving forward with this, I'll make sure you're protected. I nodded, grateful for her directness. I am, I said. I need to be free of this. She outlined the steps we'd need to take, and by the time I left her office, I felt a sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I had a plan. That evening, I sat Lisa down in the living room. She looked at me with mild curiosity, as if she couldn't imagine what I might have to say. I met with a lawyer today, I said, my voice steady. I've decided to file for divorce. For a moment, her expression didn't change. Then her eyes narrowed, and she let out a sharp laugh. You're serious? Very, I replied. She shook her head, crossing her arms. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? After everything we've been through? Lisa, you walked away a long time ago, I said, keeping my tone calm. I'm just making it official. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. You made your choices, Lisa, and so have I. This isn't working anymore. You know it, and I know it. Her face hardened, and she leaned back against the couch. Fine, she said, her voice dripping with bitterness. If that's what you want. It's what I need, I said. The conversation ended there. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door to the bedroom behind her. I stayed on the couch, staring at the blank TV, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. In the days that followed, Lisa vacillated between anger and indifference. One moment, she would lash out, accusing me of giving up too easily. The next, she would act as though none of it mattered, spending hours scrolling through her phone or going out with friends. I kept my distance, focusing on the steps I needed to take to move forward. The lawyer sent over the paperwork, and I made sure everything was in order before handing it to Lisa. When I placed the documents on the counter in front of her, she barely glanced at them. Guess this is really happening, she said, her voice flat. It is, I replied. She picked up the papers, flipping through them without much interest. Fine. If you want out so badly, I won't stop you. Her apathy stung more than I wanted to admit, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I nodded and walked away. As the process dragged on, I found myself leaning on Lauren more and more. She was going through the same thing with David, and our shared experiences brought us closer. We met for coffee, talked on the phone, and supported each other in ways our spouses never had. One night, after a particularly long conversation, Lauren said something that stuck with me. It's hard now, she said, her voice soft but certain. But one day, we're going to look back on this and realize it was the best thing that could have happened to us. I wanted to believe her, and maybe I did. When the divorce was finalized, Lisa moved out, taking her things and leaving behind a house that felt strangely empty. But for all the emptiness, there was also peace. The marriage was over, and so was the chaos that had consumed my life. For the first time in years, I felt free. The day Lisa moved out felt oddly quiet. There was no dramatic goodbye, no parting words. She packed her things methodically, loading them into the car without even glancing at me. When the last box was gone, she paused briefly at the door. Well, she said, not looking back, I guess this is it. I guess it is, I replied, keeping my voice steady. She lingered for a moment, as if expecting me to say more. When I didn't, she shrugged and walked out, shutting the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. For a while, I just stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been. The reality of it all sank in slowly, like a heavy weight settling over my chest. But alongside the sadness, there was also a sense of relief. The constant tension, the arguments, the betrayal, it was all over. In the weeks that followed, I started putting my life back together. It wasn't easy. The house felt too big, too quiet, and I often caught myself reaching for my phone to call Lisa before remembering she wasn't there anymore. I leaned on Lauren more than ever. We continued to meet regularly, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just for a walk in the park. She was going through her own process of healing, navigating the end of her marriage with David. One evening, as we sat on a bench overlooking the river, she turned to me with a small smile. You seem lighter, she said. Lighter? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. She nodded. Yeah, like the weight's finally starting to lift. I thought about it for a moment, then realized she was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. Maybe I am, I said. Lauren smiled, her expression softening. It's nice to see. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the water ripple under the fading sunlight. As time went on, I began to rediscover myself. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that challenged and excited me. I reconnected with old friends, people I had drifted away from during the years I spent trying to hold my marriage together. I even started taking better care of myself, physically, mentally, emotionally. It was a slow process, but with every step forward, I felt a little stronger, a little more whole. Lauren and I remained close, but we were careful not to rush into anything. We both knew the importance of healing on our own before deciding what our relationship might become. One afternoon, as we sat in her backyard watching her dog chase a ball, she turned to me and said something that stayed with me. "You know, Mark," she said, "what happened to us, it doesn't define who we are. It's just part of the story. The rest of it, that's up to us to write." She was right. The betrayal, the pain, the heartbreak, they were all chapters in a story that wasn't over yet. And for the first time, I felt like I had the power to shape what came next. Eventually, I sold the house. It was too tied to memories I didn't want to carry anymore, too filled with echoes of a life that no longer fit me. I found a smaller place in a different neighborhood, one that felt fresh and full of potential. As I unpacked my things in the new house, I came across a photo of Lisa and me from years ago. We were at the beach, both of us laughing, her arms around my shoulders. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness, a fleeting reminder of what we had once been. But I didn't dwell on it. I placed the photo in a box and slid it under the bed, letting the past stay where it belonged. The future was mine now, and for the first time in years, I felt ready to embrace it. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were in Mark's shoes, how would you have handled Lisa's initial proposal? If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.